Antal Doráti. Antal Doráti UK, US, Hungarian, Antal Doráti, 9 April 1906 – 13 November 1988, was a Hungarian-born conductor and composer who became a naturalized American citizen in 1943. Biography. Antal Doráti was born in Budapest, where his father Alexander Doráti was a violinist with the Budapest Philharmonic Orchestra and his mother Margit Kunwald was a piano teacher. He studied at the Franz Liszt Academy with Zoltán Kodály and Leo Weiner for composition, Béla Bartók for piano. His links with Bartók continued for many years. He conducted the world premiere of Bartók's Viola Concerto, as completed by Tibor Surly, with the Minneapolis Symphony Orchestra in 1949, with William Primrose as the soloist. He made his conducting debut in 1924 with the Budapest Royal Opera. As well as composing original works, he compiled and arranged pieces by Johann Strauss Roman II for the Ballet Graduation Ball 1940, premiered by the original Ballet Russe in Sydney, Australia, with himself on the conductor's podium. For ballet theatre, later renamed American Ballet Theatre, he created scores for the ballets Bluebeard 1941 from music by Jacques Offenbach and The Fair at Sorochinsk 1943 from music by Modest Mussorgsky. His autobiography, Notes of 7 Decades, was published in 1979. In 1983, Queen Elizabeth Roman II made Doráti an honorary Knight Commander of the Order of the British Empire KB. This entitled him to use the post-nominal letters KB. By convention, honorary knights do not generally use the Sir unless they subsequently acquire UK citizenship. His wife was Ilse von Alpenheim, an Austrian pianist. Doráti died at the age of 82 in Jersey, Switzerland. Career. Doráti held posts as principal conductor of the following orchestras: Ballet Russe, music director 1937–1941. Ballet Theatre Orchestra 1941–1945. Dallas Symphony Orchestra 1945–48. Minneapolis Symphony Orchestra 1949–60. BBC Symphony Orchestra 1963–66, which bid him a fond farewell, playing his symphony in 5 movements and his madrigal suite. Stockholm Philharmonic Orchestra 1966–74, with which he recorded his Symphony No. 1 and his Symphony No. 2, Querela Passus, on the BIS label. He took that orchestra on its first international tours. National Symphony Orchestra in Washington, D.C. 1970–77, which he rescued from bankruptcy and a players' strike. Detroit Symphony Orchestra 1977–81. Royal Philharmonic Orchestra 1975–79. Recordings. He made his first recording with the London Philharmonic Orchestra for the recording label His Master's Voice. This was later transferred to RCA Records, with whom HMV were for some time associated. Over the course of his career, Doráti made over 600 recordings. With the Philharmonia Hungarica, Doráti was the second conductor to record the complete symphonies of Joseph Haydn. The first complete recorded edition was conducted by Ernst Marzendorfer and the Vienna Chamber Orchestra, but it had a very limited release. He also recorded an unprecedented cycle of Joseph Haydn's operas and Ottorino Respighi's ancient airs and dances, Suites 1, 2, and 3. Doráti became especially well known for his recordings of Tchaikovsky's music. He was the first conductor to record all 3 of Tchaikovsky's ballets, Swan Lake, The Sleeping Beauty, and The Nutcracker complete. The albums were recorded in mono in 1954 and 1955 for Mercury Records, released on CD by the Doráti Society, with the Minneapolis Symphony Orchestra, later renamed the Minnesota Orchestra, as part of their famous Living Presence series. All 3 ballets were at first issued separately, but were later reissued in a 6 LP set. Doráti never re-recorded Swan Lake, released on CD by Universal Mercury, but he did make a stereo recording of The Sleeping Beauty, again complete with the Concertgebouw Orchestra of Amsterdam for Philips Classics Records, and 2 complete recordings in stereo of The Nutcracker, one with the London Symphony Orchestra again for Mercury, and the other with the Concertgebouw Orchestra for Philips, all this within a span of about 27 years. He also recorded all 4 of T. Tchaikovsky's orchestral suites with the New Philharmonia Orchestra, and he was the first conductor to make a recording of T. Tchaikovsky's 1812 overture featuring the Minneapolis Symphony Orchestra with real cannons, brass band, and church bells, first in mono in 1954 and then in stereo in 1958. Both the mono and stereo 1812 versions sold over 1 million copies and awarded a gold disc by the RIAA. He also recorded all 6 of T. Tchaikovsky's symphonies with the London Symphony Orchestra. Other prominent composers in Doráti's recording career were Béla Bartók and Igor Stravinsky. His comprehensive series of Bartók's orchestral works for Mercury have been brought together on a 5 CD set. He also made the first stereo recording of Leo Delibes' Coppelia with the Minneapolis Symphony Orchestra. An album set of Richard Wagner's opera The Flying Dutchman is also among Doráti's more popular recordings. In 1969, he made the world premiere recording of Sibelius's tone poem Leonotar with Gwyneth Jones as soprano soloist. In 1973, he conducted the world premiere recording of Max Bruch's concerto for 2 pianos and orchestra, which was written in 1912 but only rediscovered in 1971. In 1969, with the Stockholm Philharmonic, he conducted the first recording of the Symphony No. 7 of Swedish composer Alan Pettersson. He lived to make digital recordings for English Decca Records, released in the US on the London label with the Detroit Symphony Orchestra and the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra and the Royal Concertgebouw Orchestra for Philips. One of these, the recording of Stravinsky's The Rite of Spring with the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, received the coveted French award Grand Prix du Disque.